officially get started. So, welcome. I'm Tanya from Six Pack Mamas. You are watching a live interview with Dr. Adele Kalteret. And before I allow and just ask Dr. Adele to give you an introduction of herself and who she is and some of her background, I just wanted to start off by taking a quote actually from your website, Dr. Adele, where you quote Paracelsus. That he was a Swiss physician, and he was a German philosopher from the German Renaissance, and definitely a man ahead of his time. And I just want to quote something you quote from him, because I liked it when I read it. He says, quote, "The art of healing comes from nature, not from the physician. Therefore, the physician must start with nature with an open mind," close quote. And I definitely found you true to that statement in everything that you do in my interaction with you. So, Dr. Adele, if you wouldn't mind giving us some background for the audience members who don't know you, not familiar with your work, how did you get into, what was the motivation behind you becoming a health practitioner?
Okay, sure. Well, that's quite a while ago, probably about 20 odd years ago. I've always been interested in health and wellness, and I did couple of triathlons, and always been part of some sport event or action cricket and netball at school and tennis and all that stuff. So I've always been interested in exercising and just generally staying healthy. And my mom and dad, who are still alive, my dad's 91 and mom's 82, are pretty healthy as well. So obviously they taught my mom, especially with her healthy cooking and things, she's taught me right from young. And my grandmother was actually saw a naturopath when she was still alive. And that was many, many years ago. And I don't know if that went in sort of subliminally somewhere into my subconscious, but generally, I mean, I've been very interested in exercise and nutrition. So when my daughter was born, my first daughter, she's 23 now, and she had terrible eczema, I wanted to find out different ways of actually helping to solve this issue. And I found that the conventional, what we call allopathic way, was just cortisone creams and just sort of suppressing the symptoms rather than actually dealing with what was causing it. So I started investigating further, and I started seeing I saw a homeopath, and I saw a couple of other natural medicine doctors who have started me sort of interested in this whole approach, and thought, now I really need to learn a little bit more about this myself. So I looked to see if there was an online training of some kind. And the only one I could find was with the International Academy of Nutrition in Australia. And they were willing to do, because I was a qualified teacher at that stage, but I had stopped teaching because I had a little baby. And I'd also done computer programming before that. So quite good on the technical side, but not the new technical stuff. I was an old COBOL programmer, but I never programmed. I actually taught people how to use the computer. So having been a teacher, I'm automatically wanting to teach about stuff that I know and I've learned. So when I managed to get onto this course with the Australian course, I managed to do that course while my babies were little. 3 years later, I had another daughter, and she was very lactose intolerant. So I had an eczema allergy baby with lots of mucus, and then I had a lactose intolerant preemie baby who was very small. And all of this info I was just sucking from every source I could get. I was just hungry for all this knowledge and info. And the basics were all nutritional based. So looking at what nutrition was, just more than just keeping you full or tasting nice. It was literally being medicine, and could be poison or medicine. So it could be good for the body or bad for the body. And learning more about that, I was just passion. It was absolute passion, love at first sight kind of thing. And it was more than just a dieteticsy thing. So it was more than just calories and macronutrients and micronutrients. It was more about food as a source of chemistry that could adjust and change your existing chemistry, and a way of using that for each individual person in a different way to actually nurture and nourish them and get them to their optimal health. So that was the starting point. That was like 23 odd years ago. And qualified as a nutritional therapist, and worked as a nutritional therapist here in Cape Town for 15 years, but not getting any recognition because it's not a recognized profession in South Africa. We try to get recognition through the Allied Health Professionals Council, through the Nutrition Council, and by the Health Professionals Council, but that just we ran into dead ends all the time. All the other my colleagues who had studied something similar, and it was just, I find that I was achieving a huge amount with my patients, but it just felt like there was something still missing in the whole equation. So I don't know, I'm Christian. I prayed about it. My husband prayed about it, and we came across this course at UWC here in Cape Town, and it was a 5-year double degree, so a 3-year degree and then another 2-year science degrees on that. In natural medicine, and there was a phytotherapy, which is a herbal component, there's a naturopathy component, there's a Chinese medicine component, and I thought I love the variety of naturopathy. And obviously that little seed planted from when I was a child with Granny having been to see a naturopath, I decided, okay, I wanted to do this naturopathy thing. So didn't realize it was so intense. First year back at varsity after being out of school for many, many, many years. I don't want to give away my age. But chemistry and physics 101 and all of this stuff, suddenly these old rusted cogs had to really kick in. And I nearly gave up in the first semester because I just thought I can't do this. This is was a hectic first year science degree. And just through, I think, God, my husband, and perseverance, I think those three got me through the first semester. And once I got going and those rusty cogs had started working again, then I just took off and just flew through the training. Absolutely loved it. Brought my own little bit of spice to the equation, being an older student at the time, and a lot of the youngsters being 19, 20 years old, hadn't interacted with an older person at the same level almost. So I ended up becoming a bit like the mother hen of the group, cool. Which I tend to be, like I want to help everybody. So it was a wonderful 5-year experience. It was very tough. It was very hard on me physically, emotionally, and physically as well. Very tough on the family. My family had to see the back of my head. You can see there's my door there. So whenever they would pop their head in there, they would see the back of my head. So that became my nickname, back of head, for 5 years. And and it's been about 5 years since I've qualified. So I was in my 40s, and it was a long, tough road, but I'm here now, and I'm just absolutely loving what I'm doing. It's exactly where I think God wants me to be, and I'm just loving it. So very briefly, that was my journey.
Oh, no, that's awesome. I'm so glad personally that you persevered and that you got where you got to today, because just for those of you who don't know how I found Dr. Adele, I was at my wit's end and completely frustrated with, let's just say, all things medical professional. Just before I met Dr. Adele, I'd been to see for quite a few months, and I obviously won't mention any names and give any details, but this person claimed to be a natural doctor, and very subtly pretended to be cleverly so, pretended to be practicing natural medicine and understand all the things, most of the things we're going to talk about today. And I just never got better. And I very quickly found out, well, when I say quickly, it took me quicker than the previous times, that I started to actually listen to my gut feel and say there's something up with this person. I'm not exactly comfortable. And that knowing question I would have in my head is, why does it feel like I know more than the professional? Why does it feel like I'm actually doing your job, but yet I'm paying you to do it? So when I started with those thoughts, those niggling thoughts and gut feeling, I realized, unfortunately, after we plowed so much cash into so-called natural test after test after test, and I don't mind the test if there was the result was an improved health condition, for me or my family. But that wasn't the case. We were just literally getting nowhere. And when I did more of a background check to this particular person, found that it's all just a scam. So that's where I was at, and I just literally went through the internet, scrolling through, looking for natural doctors. And then what caught my eye about Dr. Adele was when she posted a story about her daughter's eczema. And I suffered a bit from eczema, but not as severely as my daughter suffers from psoriasis. And that was a connection for me. Again, I just went with my gut feel, and it was like, okay, but still cautiously optimistic. I picked up the phone and I phoned Dr. Adele, and I'm sure she could hear a little frustration in my voice because, and I remember actually saying, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just, going to get straight to the point. And I kind of like grilled her, asking all these questions because I wasn't sure if, are you just someone again out to scare me, and take me down this hopeful path that my health was going to improve or my family's health was going to improve. And then at the end of it, I'm just left disappointed and, and losing loads of cash. So she was so kind and so patient and so sweet. And anyway, that was the start of our relationship. And then that's how I got to meet Dr. Adele, and I've seen her in 2018. And really, it was like finding, which is rare. As I say, they are the wrong experts, but there's also the right experts, and Dr. Adele is definitely one of those right experts. And like I said in my intro, when we were doing the test, when you find the right expert, and by that I mean the health practitioner that truly cares about your unique health journey and everything about you, and not just, what they can get out of you, and not just give you a one-size-fits-all approach, then you hang on to them with dear life because they are a treasure. And so that's my introduction to Dr. Adele. But Dr. Adele, for those of us who are not so clued up about the difference between the natural way of practicing medicine versus what you call the allopathic way, could you just give a bit of a definition, or help us understand what the key differences are between naturopathy and allopathy, if that's the correct term?
Okay. All right. So a medical doctor is trained in medicine, and we refer to them as allopathic because it is a form of focusing on the medicine to treat the symptom rather than always addressing the cause. And it's not a blanket statement that all allopathic doctors don't address the causes, because there are many out there that do. But the training is very much focused on what medication there is for the condition or the symptom of the condition. And with natural medicine, all of the natural medicine modalities, and we're looking at homeopathy, naturopathy, etc. But with naturopathy, it's more like the general practitioner, the GP of natural medicine. So there's a little bit of everything in a toolbox that you can then use to say, what if all these bits are going to be, or these tools are going to be best for this patient, so that you can then take the unique patient and put a combination of different treatment options together for that person and make it as unique to that person as they are unique. Whereas conventional medicine or allopathic medicine is very much formed by the medication specifically for those. So there might be 5 different medications for blood pressure, for example, but that is it. They're not addressing what is causing the blood pressure. Rather, they just give the medication to bring the blood pressure down. And again, it's not a blanket statement, because there are doctors, medical doctors who do look at causative stuff as well. So it's not overall. I just want to restate that several times. But in general, that's what we find.
Yes.
In conventional allopathic medicine treats the symptom, whereas natural medicine, no matter what modality, even Chinese medicine, they definitely look more at the cause. So the root, and it's more than one cause always. It's never as simple as one specific thing that causes the problem. So you'd look at blood pressure from a slightly different perspective and say, well, what could be causing that blood pressure? Is it hardening of the artery specific, or is it, and then maybe looking at the calcium intake for that patient, just as an example, or is it a stress-related anxiety causing the blood pressure, which you would treat obviously very differently. Just as a simple example, or is that patient unable to process sodium very effectively in their body? Are they not drinking enough water? So you would look at a variety of like root causes to that, not just that one condition, but the overall patient. So rather than honing in on the disease, you look at the patient. It's all about you, the patient. It's not about your diseases or your illnesses, but they are clues to what is going awry in the body, that is not working as well as it should, and using those as clues to help address what potentially is causing that dis-ease, rather than disease, with a little hyphen in between, is a far, it's just more logical to me. I'm very logical. I used to be a computer programmer, so I'm very logical. And it's logical for me to say, well, if you've got a symptom, surely you've got to look at what is caused, or potentially. So the differential diagnosis might be much broader, and it might not be a single diagnosis. There might be 6 things causing that. And I think, unfortunately, obviously, even with things like an ICD-10 code that most medical doctors, and we have to as well, if we are claiming from medical aid, would have to hone in on one specific code, which is a diagnostic code. It's an international diagnostic code of what is wrong with that patient. But I've often got 12 ICD-10 codes that I can assign to that patient, because there's so many different issues and so many potential causes that are all coming together to create this stew, which is the patient's stew, and everybody's stew is different and unique. So I don't know if I've answered the question.
Yes, no, very much so, because it's like you say, it's not all medical doctors that practice allopathic medication that that take a one size all fits approach, and they do look at the causes and not just treat the symptoms. In my experience, though, one of the big differences, like you're saying, I found was, besides the fact that they don't typically look at in the doctors that I saw, it was just treating the symptoms, not looking at the cause, or saying that excuse me, that putting down the cause to simply genetics. It's a hereditary disease, and therefore You cannot cure it. You can only control it through medication. And they don't necessarily see, in my experience, or treat the body as a whole, that something can affect something else, and that it's, what I mean by that, let me be more specific,
Yeah.
that just because I'm asthmatic and the symptoms are all in the lung and affects my breathing, that's where the focus is, on the lung. So let's just keep the lung open. Let's keep, the wheezing to a minimum, so that she can breathe, so that she doesn't suffocate and die. But they don't look at that there's a gut connection to the lung, and focus on the gut. So that the understanding that the gut greatly influences lung function. So they tend to isolate, in my experience, the illness to a particular organ, whether it's your pancreas or your kidneys or your lungs, but don't look at the body as a whole. That was in my experience. And on that note, how much do you focus on gut health, in your practice?
It's let's say it's the core hub of what I do. Okay, so you know this backwards, so I'm preaching to the choir here for you, Tanya. So,
and that's a rhetorical question for me.
Yeah, the gut is where it all happens. I mean, we do absorb things obviously through inhaling through the lungs and through the sinus cavity and through the mucous membranes all the way down in the airways, and we do absorb via our skin, and we do absorb, in slightly different ways, but the predominant source of our absorption of everything is via our gut. So whatever we swallowing, eating, drinking, etc., whatever's going into the gut is where the source of all our chemistry, basically. And it's, yes, we can produce certain chemicals by thinking differently. So the brain so we've got this gut axis, which is linked to all the different areas. So we've got a brain and gut axis, connection, and we've got a lung and gut connection, and every single organ is primarily connected to the gut. So, if people say, well, how can you say, like, the foot, how can the foot be connected to the gut? Well, if you are not absorbing enough nutrients, or you're not putting enough nutrients in to support blood flow and nerve support, etc., how are you going to feed the health of that foot without whatever you're putting in? So what you're putting in and what goes into the gut is either going to irritate the gut, or it's going to nourish the gut, and then it's going to be absorbed or not absorbed. So you're going to get good stuff being absorbed and unhealthy, not such good stuff, toxic stuff being absorbed. Or you're not going to get absorption. So you're going to put all the good stuff in. So you can take all the supplements and all the pillikis and all that you want, but if you're not absorbing that, you're basically going to be pooping that all out, or peeing that all out. Okay, so it's going to go as a natural waste product out of the system, but you're not absorbing it. So the gut is the source of everything. It's literally where we have to start with every patient, and we're all unique. So just, you mentioned earlier, it's just like when you were searching for a naturopath or a natural doctor, and you went with your gut feeling. I mean, how more solid is that, to reinforce the fact that the gut is so essential, not only just to a source, like a repository for all the food and drink that we're having, but also a source of a lot of our emotion, and how our emotions can affect it, and how the gut affects our emotions and our brain function and our mood and our ability to focus and concentrate and all of that. So it's key. It's absolutely key. And if we can get that working well, so many other things just fall into place. So that's where we've got to start.
Yeah. No,
I could talk about the gut forever.
I know.
So stop me.
I know, me too. That's why I promised just an hour. So for those of you who jumped on in the last about 15 to 20 minutes. Welcome. Hello, I do see you. So welcome to this interview. Yeah, all things gut health is so fascinating for me as well. It's just, I mean, my family just looks at me and they laugh because they say I'm the highest user of our internet bandwidth because I just download everything connected to the gut, and I'm listening constantly, and there's always new things that they're discovering about the gut and the species, the different species of bacteria that's living and what they do. It's like they've just, touching the tip of the iceberg. And it's so fascinating how these organisms are interacting with us, with everything, and all that we are. So much is influenced by our gut, like you say, the emotions and everything. So that's like so cool. Yeah, I'm a bit nerdy when it comes to gut health. I love everything gut health. I think mainly because it was such a relief to me to understand that I finally had one thing to focus on, that all these diseases, whether it was in the skin, showing itself up in the skin, or the lungs, or in the sinuses, or, brain fog issues, that there was one starting point, and that was focusing on the gut. And for so many years, I was treated for all these different things in isolation, and it became confusing and overwhelming a lot of the time because it didn't work. It just, didn't solve, it didn't improve it. It just kind of didn't let it get worse or out of control. But at the same time, there was no hope for improvement or even a cure, like in the case of my eczema, where that was just cured by good probiotics. So I love, and I'm excited about focusing on gut healing and how the gut plays such a huge part in our health functioning and our mood functioning, and how it strengthens us. Or, the opposite is also true when we're looking for issues, to look at the gut first. So I absolutely love that about your practice. So yeah, but let's move on from there. One of the things.
Before you move on,
yeah,
there
sure,
you can see that.
sure.
There, look, can you see that diagram at the back there? Okay, yeah, got a big poster of the gut. Yeah, that we got to start there.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, yeah. That's where it all starts. That's where it all starts. So, so one of your core principles, you lay them out. You've got 6, and I just wanted to touch on 1 or 2. Your principle number 4, you call it the core principles or 6 foundations of naturopathy. You say doctor as teacher. You see yourself as a teacher. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Absolutely. Well, number one, I am a qualified teacher, so it's in my blood. My grandmother was a teacher. My father was a teacher. My cousins are teachers. So it's really, I think it's genetically wired in there somewhere. But docere is the Latin for doctor, and it actually means teacher. So docere, doctor, means teacher. And I think what has been lost in the whole sausage machine of medicine, and going to see a doctor or a general practitioner even, it's often just a 15-minute quick consultation. What is wrong? Write out a script for the medication, or give you a shot of this or whatever, and off you go. And there's very little interaction with that patient. So there's very little understanding of what's going on in their lives, how stressed they are they going through a divorce, what's happening at work. So I think of a naturopath more as the old school general practitioner, the old doctor that used to know you and your family and your history, and know, like a family friend almost, and to get to know you in a deeper, meaningful way than just what disease or what ailment or what symptom do you have, and then quickly just treating that with some medication that might just help along the way. So teaching patients about their health and the reason why am I going to be doing this blood test, or why am I going to do this genetic test, or why am I going to send you for the stool sample test. I don't want to just dictate. I want to be part of it must be a two-way interaction. It's a team effort that you as the patient and me as the doctor, we work together in figuring out what is, I mean, I don't know everything. I'm going to obviously have to do tests and stuff like that. But together, you know your body better than anybody in the whole world. So getting that information from you and then helping you to understand certain of the basics, even if it's just some biochemistry and understanding the microbiome and the bacteria, or understanding that, you know, doing too much exercise can be as harmful for you as doing too little exercise, but depending on you as an individual person. So I use the term uniqueifying. It's a made up word, but it's uniqueifying. Yeah, and uniqueifying that training and teaching for that patient based on that individual patient's needs, requirements, and learning about yourself, and bringing some of that science and the chemistry and all that in, and trying to just adapt it and simplify it in a way that is understandable to the patient, but also gives them that it's a self-awareness to a certain extent as well, but also that knowledge to be able to say, well, you could Google this all, but Dr. Google's not going to know your unique circumstances. So you're going to get general information, no matter how natural it is. It might not be uniqueified enough for you because you are different to everybody else. Your fingerprint is different. So yes, how much more unique are you in all aspects? So me as a naturopath, I want to interact with you as an individual, as a unique human being with all your issues, and get to know you as a personal, but also then teach a little bit about what is happening within your body so that you can start having some control over that. So it's not self-control, but it's control over what you now are going to be doing or not doing. So if you know eventually and understand the concept of how much whatever you're doing is like going to bed too late, and how it's stressing out your whole cycle and your circadian rhythm and your cortisol levels, and you don't know why you're feeling a little anxious, it could be that you've just, you know, I've got to teach you potentially what might be the issue, or what could potentially be causing some of those problems. And then you've got that power. It's an empowerment for you as a patient then to take that further. You can then research that further and say, well, Dr. Dell's planted the seed for me of what this could be. Let me figure out and start reading and researching a little bit more. And then me taking control of that, because ultimately your health is your issue. It's not my issue. So you need to still take control of that, even though I'm here to help support and to teach a little bit and guide, and that's why I'm here. I'm your guide, to guide you in the right direction and
yes,
and support you along that route. But ultimately the teacher is actually going to be you're going to be teaching yourself to a certain extent as well. So, but yeah, that's yeah,
no,
I think I've covered. I think I've
yeah,
covered
no,
it.
wonderfully. Thank you, because that's one of the aspects. I think why it stood out for me is one of the aspects I love about you, and the way you treat me as your patient, and I'm sure all your patients, because it makes a patient feel like we're building a relationship with you. And there's an openness and there's a freedom to say, this is how I feel. No, I don't understand what you mean, or that's not my experience. Or, you know, it opens up that relationship between the patient and yourself when you know, all the power, as you say, isn't just with the health practitioner or the professional with the degrees. Because in my experience growing up, and because I spent the majority of my life under medical doctors, from the word go, because I was diagnosed as an allergy asthmatic from 9 months old, I spent a lot of my time in the Red Cross Hospital. and had to do monthly checkups at the hospital. And 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 maybe it's just me, but I found that um, watching my parents, or sometimes my grandmother, used to take me to hospital and for my checkups, and there was definitely this atmosphere of, you don't question the doctor, you do as he tells you to do, and he's the professional, and you know nothing, basically. You just do as you're told. So they didn't question. They weren't made to feel like they could question. And so I love that approach, that actually you are responsible. I'm responsible for my health. So, and I should know my body, and it's great and wonderful that I have the support and of somebody who's done, the work, and is able to open up such a huge range of possibilities of what could be affecting my health. And I can put that together and say, yes, you're right, that's actually what I'm experiencing, or no, I think it's something else. So I love that aspect of your practice. So hello to everybody who jumped on now. I see some new names on the screen. Welcome. And just to let you know, this will be recorded and reposted on Facebook and Instagram. So if you're only hopping on halfway through, you won't miss out anything, I promise. So Dr. Dow,
Hi,
I
Mike.
also, oh, it's your peeps.
I see a Mike Wheelahan. Hi, all the way from Germany.
Oh, cool. Nice. We're international. So there's also your I wanted to just go into to cover a bit about the specifics that you do as a naturopath, because you specialize in quite a bit of things, which is so cool. So just so that people know what you do. So one of the things you allowed me to do, and I hope you can see the file, was the genetic testing. So that I found cool. That's my file, and it's got like all these cool colored charts in to tell me about my body, my genetics. That's one of the things you offer. And then the you say you've got a special interest in nutritional therapy, which I think is what we covered, unless there's something, one or two things you want to add to that.
No, just I think for people to understand the difference between just focusing on calories for and macronutrients and micronutrients specifically, which I think a lot of dietitians are trained in that sort of almost like a medical view of nutrition, whereas nutritional therapy is looking more at using nutrition as medicine rather than only as an adjunct to a medical treatment. So I'm not talking about intravenous feeding or tube feedings or stuff like that. That obviously you need very specialized dietitians to in a clinical environment to do all of that. So I'm not trained in that at all, but I'm trained more looking at nutrition as medicine and using supplementation or nutraceuticals and things to support the patient based on their needs at that time. And that therapy is a changing therapy. So if you're eating sufficient, you don't need to then supplement. But if you're not eating sufficient, you would need to fill in the gap. And so that's what supplements mean, fill in the gap, supplementing your diet. So if your diet is filling in all the holes and gaps, then you won't really need to supplement a lot. But we do find a lot of patients, and you've mentioned the genetic testing, that often we find there's certain areas or pathways that don't work that well because of a genetic risk factors or little what we call SNPs or variants. And we need to support that body. And sometimes we need to support for the rest of your life because it's just what you have been gifted with or blessed with from a genetics perspective. And we need to just top up on a regular basis. But once you know that, it's a empowering, it's very empowering, because you can then say, well, I've got this, I know how to work with it. I can then use my nutrition as therapy to actually treat and support my body and be proactive rather than being reactive to now I'm suddenly sick, now I can treat, or rather, before I get sick, let me support the body so that I don't get sick. So it's about assessing your nutrition as a medicine and a therapy, and it fluctuates from age to stage, from gender, based on your exercise, based on your exposure to different things as well. So each person's nutritional program, it will be different. There'll be overlap, but everybody's will be slightly different. Yeah.
Into epigenetics, or is epigenetics something different?
Okay, so epigenetics is how the environment affects you. So if you're looking at somebody who's grown up in a very cold environment, the environment from a temperature perspective, but also from the exposure, maybe lack of exposure to sunlight, and the potential for producing vitamin D is reduced, etc. But have they been brought up in a family where there's been smoking, and was the mother drinking when she was pregnant, or are you living next to a refinery where you are absorbing a lot of toxic fumes from the air, or a whole variety? Are you exposed? What bacteria and viruses and things have you been exposed to as a child to build up your microbiome in your body, and an immune system to strengthen that immune system? So the epigenetics is that environmental influence on the genetics. So, and remember, your genetics that we're looking at, the nutrigenetics and the epigenetics, they all, most of the variants that we're looking at, in fact all of them, are modifiable through diet and lifestyle. So they're not like, oh, you've got this cast in stone gene, oh sorry, but sorry for you, you've nothing we can do about it. These are, you can switch these on and you can switch these off, and learning how to switch the ones that are problematic off, and to learn how to switch the ones that are beneficial on. That is what this whole nutrigenetics, nutrigenomics, epigenetics is all about. And that's why I love doing that, and doing that test with patients as a starting point, almost like an architectural plan of you as a person genetically, and what the building that has been built on that structure, on that foundation, is your body, and how you've coped or haven't coped through the years. And why is there a crack in the wall there? It's that foundation is a little bit wobbly, and we need to address that and strengthen that foundation so that wall can then function better or be better for you. I hope that makes sense. I've incorporated a bit there.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. But you know, I can understand. I've been looking and reading up and listening to, you know, what you've been talking about. I might not know the terms, but I know what you're saying is familiar to me, because it's things that I've listened to or read up from, you know, just researching my own health, and how does everything function, and the influences outside the body and inside the body, and how does that all come together, good or bad. But an example of what I thought about when you said, it doesn't necessarily mean that because you might type 2 diabetes, maybe you have, would that be an example of, hey, just because it's in your family genes, or you know, like my dad has type 2 diabetes, that it necessarily means I'm going to get it, that I can prevent it by nutritional therapy, by giving my body and building up my health to the point where I don't ever have to. Is that an example of what you're talking about?
Yes, to a certain extent. So remember, you're getting your genetics from your mother and your father, and they've got that from their mother and father. So we're looking at this whole web of ancestral genetics that comes down to, you know, the sperm and the egg together from your mom and your dad, and that's the genetic component. So that's why you're different to a sister or a brother or siblings. And even to a certain extent, you know, twins, you know, they'll also have some slight changes within them, even though they might look fairly identical. There'll be some differences in their genetics, and we can, to a certain extent, if we know what your risk factors are, let's say diabetes, if you've inherited that from your father, then we can switch a lot of that off through nutrition, through lifestyle changes, through exercise, through supporting your body. And again, that's just one of the areas, because it's important to always remember we've got to look at the whole lot together. We can't just look at the one area. So do we look, I mean, there's diabetes over here in this area, but there could be oxidative stress. There could be detox issues. There could be problems with methylation. And so we've got to look at all of that together as a big picture to say, okay, well, how are these genes affecting you, or these variants that you've inherited? How are they going to affect you? So yes, there might be a slight increase for diabetes, but there could be a slight increase for not detoxing very well, or more oxidative stress. So we've got to then look at adjusting a nutritional program to support all of that. And that would mean nutrition as food first, and then incorporating some supplements on top of that to fill in the gaps, and to act as treatment for certain areas that might be potentially problematic. So as a supportive treatment, but nutrition, food is the foundation of it all. And then we just fill in the gaps with the supplements and the nutraceuticals and things. So we can switch those things off. But you've got to, we learn together, and I teach and I support the patient to help to switch that off, and knowing what you can do. But ultimately, you've got to do it. And a lot of patients know what they must do, but it's so difficult to do it sometimes. So if we say, well, you shouldn't actually be having alcohol, you've got a very high genetic risk of getting Alzheimer's, and alcohol is a real issue here. A lot of patients as well, I can't not have, I just, my choice, and it's all down to choice really. So if they've chosen, now that they know what they can and can't do, but if you choose to not or to do it, it's still your choice. So I can't blame you for it. I can just be there as a support. So I can say, all right, let's, I call it the donkey approach. We've got to take either the stick or the carrot. So some patients really are better with a carrot. So it's like rewards and motivation and all that. And some patients are better with a stick. And it's like, oh, look at those insulin levels or whatever. And we like scare them with the stick. But generally, I find most patients need a little bit of both. I need a bit of a stick and a carrot combination.
No, definitely.
And yes, you could prevent from getting diabetes. But if you don't do what you need to do, then you might get the diabetes. So ultimately, it boils down to, okay, you need to do what you need to do. But at least you know what to do. And before that, you might not have known what you need to do.
Is the good news, to know that it is preventable, and to know exactly how to prevent it. That I find such an awesome privilege to be able to do that, because I grew up in an era where the message seemed to be, it's something you get older and you're going to get these diseases, and at a certain time, at a certain age, you must expect your body to behave in a certain way. And I'm so grateful that I know now that it's not the case, and it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, you can't stop the aging process, and yes, it doesn't mean that you're never going to get sickly, but I think it definitely makes a difference to the quality of life that you can have. And I'm just seeing it in a lot of people that are my age and older that I know very, very well. It's sad for me to see that, the quality of health is deteriorating, and deteriorating fast. where there are solutions to slow it down or to prevent it completely. And that is probably why I'm so passionate to introduce people like you out there, and let people know that the message is you don't have to. It's not necessary to go to suffer unnecessary. And yes, it is challenging, and yes, it is. It takes a bit of work up here to gather the information, but that's where support helps, I think, because I found that having a community of people, like-minded people to encourage you, because it's not always easy to change those habits. It's
No,
not always
no.
easy to stop, your favorite foods, and but with encouragement, with help, with the right knowledge, and when you start feeling better, I think you do better. That's often what I say, because you chase after that good feeling. You don't want it to stop. You chase after the energy, the stamina, the strength, the brain, the mental energy. All those things are such good rewards, and it's amazing. But I know to get off that square one is very, very hard. It's not easy for a lot of people. So that's a bit of why I'm doing what I'm doing, really, because I want to encourage people and get the message out there. There's hope. There's hope. It doesn't matter what your age. There is hope, and you can improve and you can get better. So I'm grateful for doctors like you are there with all the knowledge to support us and the testings that we need and so on. I'm very grateful for that. Dr. Dal, you talk about, I think we also touched on it, but functional medicine, that we do, and if there's one or two things that we didn't cover, shall we talk a bit about that, or do you feel we covered what functional medicine is?
I think maybe just for some of the viewers who are in the States, they probably have heard of functional medicine doctors and practitioners. I do find some of our local, in South Africa, a lot of people haven't heard of functional medicine. But I think if you've done a little bit of research online, I'm sure you would have come across many naturopaths and many medical doctors even who claim to be functional medicine doctors or have done training, etc. So I do find that it actually really boils down to it's basically naturopathic principles. It really is very similar to naturopathy, but it's quite difficult, obviously, for a medical doctor to now start saying that they're doing naturopathy because they haven't trained as a naturopath. So it's a term that has been very useful. It's been introduced about 20 years ago-ish, where a lot of the medical doctors were seeing that the conventional treatment methods were not working, and they wanted to incorporate some of this root causative support stuff. So, and that all comes from naturopathic principles. So addressing the root cause has built up over the years into this term called functional medicine, so that other doctors of different training can incorporate this term to indicate to patients that they actually are using natural medicine as part of their toolbox as well, and not just using conventional allopathic medicine. And in South Africa, the term integrative medicine has blossomed quite a lot. So there's the South African Society of Integrative Medicine, and I belong to that as well. But they are mainly medical doctors, but also natural medicine doctors, combining resources and knowledge and information, and we share information with each other. And that, I think, is the whole part of being a medical practitioner, is that you don't know everything yourself, and getting information from others where they're integrating natural medicine into the normal medical way of doing things. And it's quite a big mind shift change for a lot of the medical doctors. And I've got some colleagues who, might even watch this, and they've struggled over the years to try and change that mindset. It's like, what natural medicine can I use to treat this disorder? So they end up still thinking that same old medical school way they've been indoctrinated to say, what medicine to treat what issue. And now it's like, okay, what natural medicine to treat what issue? And it was like, no, stop. You got to stop.
Thanks for watching. As you think about this offer, let's talk about keeping your details safe online. The way we keep things safe is when you take this offer, you'll be directed to paypal.com, the world's largest e-commerce payment provider. There are 3 reasons why we ask you to capture your details on PayPal. Firstly, your confidential details are held with world-class security on their website, not ours. PayPal also offers you an independent refund guarantee in case we break any of our promises. We do keep our promises, but we thought that the peace of mind would be important to you. Thirdly, PayPal also lets you cancel any free trial or subscription with them without even asking us. So click the button below and you'll be able to take the offer securely and effortlessly with your existing PayPal account if you're already a user, or with a credit or debit card if you don't have a PayPal account. We look forward to you taking this offer with PayPal so that we can do what we do best. See you on the inside.